Growth Pod is brought to you by Genero, a leading growth agency in the Nordics. We interview marketing experts, business leaders, and entrepreneurs to uncover the stories and strategies behind profitable growth.
Today's guest is Byron Sharp, a professor, author, and marketing researcher. Byron is the director of the Ehrenberg Bass Institute at the University of South Australia Business School, which is the world's largest research institute studying marketing. Welcome to the show, Byron.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. I'm in Adelaide, but it's lovely to
on
be
the opposite side of the planet. I'm really excited to kind of have this opportunity to ask you questions and pick your brain. And I would just want to take a minute to kind of set it up and explain why. So years ago, I was involved in a branding project for a client, and we were trying to figure out kind of like this long-term vision or overall direction to take this brand. And I was really frustrated because in the previous years, I felt that there were no principles on which I could base my kind of intuition or strategy when it comes to making these long-term bets. And so in this project was a really experienced marketer, one of the most kind of, a respected, really experienced marketer. And I asked him if he knows of any books that could kind of help me with that. And he ended up buying me a book, which I read cover to cover. And it was exactly what I was looking for. It described these kind of law-like patterns of buying behavior that were actually empirically derived and based. And so I thought it was the best marketing book I've ever read. I still think the same to this day. And of course, the book is How Brands Grow, which you wrote. So for that reason, I'm really excited to like I said, pick your brain and get to share some of your knowledge with our listeners.
Thank you. I was going to say it's a tremendous compliment, but then I thought maybe not so much, because most marketing books are awful. So
yeah, well, that's true, but it certainly stands out in a kind of sea of opinions and cliches and truisms.
Yeah, I mean, its design was to introduce the world to the fact that we did actually have scientific laws, natural laws, patents that hold over a vast range of conditions to the world. And, Joel Goodhart said, marketers not knowing about these things. It's like, it's like being a flight engineer and not knowing about gravity. We love marketing. We love to tell the rest of the organization that we're the external facing part, voice of the customer and all that. And yet, awful lot of marketers don't even get out of their office very much. Weren't aware of the empirical laws. And empirical laws just mean law-like patterns in the real world.
Exactly. Maybe it's because we as marketers feel that we have the power to change perception. So these rules of how people actually think shouldn't be applied to us.
Maybe. I think it's maybe that we feel that we intuitively know things, but human beings have thought that for hundreds of thousands of years. They've intuitively known why the sun comes up, or that river was caused by a great snake 10,000 years ago. Stories like that. We always felt that we have, if we can tell a good story and everyone nods, well, it must be true. The scientific revolution is only about 300 years old. It's quite embarrassing for humans, actually. 300 years ago, we decided, well, maybe we should, stop theorizing and go out into the real world and study it carefully. Take timings or measure things and stuff. And then, lo and behold, we started to document patterns. And that's what scientific laws are. And of course, there are in marketing too, because the marketing is in a real world. And while we can't predict what an individual consumer might be able to do, is going to do tomorrow, we can predict in aggregate that an 18% share brand will be bought by this many people over the next 6 months, and will be bought by those people on average this many times. We can predict that, yes.
I love what you said, because that's the feeling I had reading the book, is that there were so many things that were completely not intuitive for me. And there are so many things that are spouted that seem logically obvious or true. And so I'd love to start the conversation there, and just kind of throw out a few things that I think are generally seen as true, but may not be so. I'll let you respond in however you want.
Okay. I'll preface it by, I think it's near impossible to think of a scientific discovery that, at least at the time, was seen as really weird and counterintuitive. And I love saying the real world is a weird place. So if you think you can understand it without going and collecting serious systematic evidence, you're wrong, because your view will be wrong. It'll always be much weirder than you thought.
That's a good point, a good place to start. So
you tell me the classic. Yeah.
Okay, so the first one I have is, everyone knows that it's way more profitable to retain an existing customer than it is to go out and acquire a new one. What are your thoughts?
Oh, right. Well, yes, that's very wrong. If you think about that, just logic, I mean, you think, what does that mean? And you have to make those two things comparable. Acquiring a customer, this is what the other would be stopping a customer leaving, right? And so you have to ask, well, how cheap is it to stop customers leaving? And you only have to think about that actually for realize that's actually really difficult. So research has shown the major reasons that customers leave are things completely outside of market's control, right? So for things like they die or they move country, or, there's just all these big changes in their life that you can't stop. So it's a line in one of our research articles that says, even growing brands lose customers. Now, so then you go, okay, how cheap is it to change that? And it turns out it's terribly difficult to change. I mean, when we compare brands, they all pretty much have exactly the same defection rates. What distinguishes brands is that they don't have the same acquisition rates. So growing brands can be acquiring customers at way more than you'd expect that they should. So that's why they're growing, right? And so growth is caused by acquisition, unusually high acquisition. Decline is not caused by unusually high defection. It's caused by a lack or underperforming on acquisition. So, once you realize that, those are the empirical facts, right? That's what happens in the real world. And then a consultant comes to you and says, "Oh, it'll be way cheaper to move your defection." None of the other, all the brands in the world, they have pretty much the same defection rates depending on their category and their size. So if it was easy to move, why has no one moved it? But brands have outperformed each other in acquisition rates, so that must be possible. Okay, right. Toyota has become the world's, are they number one or pretty close to that, right? Number one car brand in the world. But they used to be a little car brand in Japan, and they've done a staggering job at acquisition. But if we look at them now as a brand, do you lose customers? Oh yeah, we still lose customers out to the other brands. Yes. But they've done better at acquisition. That's how they became number one.
Are you saying that like these cult brands, like an Apple, like essentially Apple has the same defection rate as a Samsung, for instance?
Yeah, if you compare you have to compare the top end phones. You can't just look at all phones because Apple doesn't play. Samsung plays in all sorts of different lower end. But take the flagship Samsung phones and the flagship Apple phones, and they have the same defection rates, which for mobile phones there's pretty high repeat rates, because particularly for the premium ones, because people tend to trade up, not down. And once you've got a phone, it's really nice. You tend to, because they're always bringing out new. By the time you go to get a new phone, there's been 3 or 4 or 5 models, so the new one is pretty attractive. So it's the repeat rates are quite high, much higher than say something like cars. But yeah, top Samsung model has same repeat rates as Apple. Yeah,
I think that's really interesting, because it kind of goes against this marketing lore that you want to build this cult brand that people tattoo like Harley Davidson. But actually you're saying acquisition is the only thing that matters in the end if you want to grow your brand.
Yeah, Harley Davidson owners buy Harley Davidson about 1/3 of the time. 2/3 of the time, on average, they buy another brand.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that from how it's kind of talked about. And
Yeah. I mean, it's not a very big brand in the world, right? Harley Davidson. But of course, it gets talked about way too much in the marketing bubble. Yeah. So we have a very distorted view of what how that brand actually competes with other brands. I used to go around taking photos. I think I've got it in the online version of How Brands Grow. I think I've got a few photos there of all these lovely, big touring bikes, right? And each one, it's like, is that a Harley? No. Is that a Harley? No. Is that a Harley? No. They have lots of competitors.
wow, that's a good point. We do live in a bubble, I think, as marketers.
I'm pretty sure if you ask them to own something like a Triumph or something, they'd go, "Oh yeah, I've got the cool brand."
That's true. So the second one, slightly related to the first one, loyalty programs. Obviously, they're popular because they work. It's for a small cost, you can retain these very profitable customers and keep them loyal, which is very profitable for the firm.
No, I don't. The only loyalty programs that make money are the ones like Qantas, and they don't make money from the program per se, holding on to more customers. It's that they sell involvement to other, like Australian banks who want to, entice people to use their credit card by giving them Qantas points, and that's quite lucrative for Qantas. But in general, a loyalty program for a retailer or something, no, they lose money. They are a cost. Why do you get into them? Probably fashion, because someone's told you that you should. Awfully hard to get out of once you've got them, which is why you should actually do your homework beforehand. No, the pretty consistently across now quite a lot of studies over, I suppose it's 20 years now, have shown that loyalty programs have a very weak effect on loyalty. And we know why, because we now know why. And that's that, of course, they attract our most loyal customers, right? They're the ones who are going to go, "Ooh, I shop here all the time. I'm going to get lots of points. Isn't that excellent?" Who are actually the last people we want to join a loyalty program because they're going to be most expensive. We want people who are the heavy loyal buyers of another brand to join us, but we don't get that. And then, they give away value to people who are going to buy from you anyway, which is quite expensive. And if someone is already, giving you a very large share of their category purchases, it's very hard for them to give you any more. And it's not, the loyalty program points aren't really much of an incentive to do it. So we don't get much of a loyalty effect, but we do get the cost. So, certainly they're hopeless at growth. I just remember we do actually get quite reasonable amounts of loyalty. It's a natural human behavior to be behaviorally loyal. Consumers, like if someone wants an expensive executive development course, they've got, work signed off and paying $100,000 for you to go and do a 1-month course somewhere, you just immediately, you think of, the top business schools come to mind, right? And you choose out of, 2 or 3 or 4 out of the 20, 30,000 choices you could have. So humans are naturally quite willing to be loyal. And so it's really dangerous to go giving them points, or dangerous, expensive, giving them points for, they'll thank you. That's lovely. Thank you. I always fly with Qantas. I'm sure Australian. It's quite hard not to fly with Qantas. So of course you join the program and then they give you stuff. Yeah. Wow, that's great. No, loyalty programs, they don't have a huge effect. They're not growth mechanisms because for a brand to grow, it must expand its customer base. And that means recruiting people who are actually non-buyers of your brand or very rare occasional buyers of your brand. You're a very small brand in their repertoire and nudging them to, make that a bigger brand repertoire. And I can think of, a dozen things off the top of my head that would be much, much, much more targeting towards those light and non-buyers than a loyalty program. Really hard. You really want to sell your loyalty program or enrollment in your loyalty program in your competitor stores, but they won't let you. So
is there any role for marketing? We think about these loyal customers, and certainly like I'm guessing is I guess what I'm saying is it the role of other business functions, certainly like customer service, to make sure that those customers are happy and they keep buying from you? Do you think marketing should primarily or only focus on light or non-buyers? Or is it a role to play?
We're always doing things for existing customers, and existing customers, even when we run our, new advertising campaign and things, it's existing customers who notice them ahead of other people. It's the challenge, the marketing challenge, the great challenge is to reach people who are, or, even not in the category, or they're in the category, but our brand is just not in their repertoire. That is the challenge. We of course, what are the best loyalty nurturing things? They're mainly, fixing major stuff ups, like just making it easy for people to keep on doing what they're doing. Whenever we do something like change a pack design, move things around in store, change policies, these are disruptors so we don't want it. This does not nurture loyalty.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, third one, kind of talking then about how do we target these buyers? So statement is you should always focus on a niche. Like you should pick within your overall potential customer base, you pick a certain segment, and it's complete ways to try to target broadly, pick a niche, and then tailor your messaging towards that specific sub-segment of customers.
Yeah, and we see some of that in the real world, but it's largely geography bound. That an Adelaide plumbing service would be stupid to run ads in Brisbane because they don't service Brisbane houses. So we certainly see that on a geographical basis. But beyond that, when you talk about brands that span geographies and compete with other brands that span geographies, and you look at their customer base looks pretty much identical to the category. There are men and women and children. There's also heterogeneity in the customer base, but that heterogeneity looks exactly the same as the category. That means you're selling to everyone in the category, so you can tell yourself that you're appealing to 28 to 38 urban women with a positive outlook and socially responsible or something. But they're a tiny. They're probably a sliver of your customer base, and you're actually selling to a lot more other people. So that's quite we were talking at the start about how marketing like to say to the rest of the organization, we understand the customer. Now, sometimes marketing just comes up with this fantasy vision of the customer. That's not understanding the customer base. We should understand that the customer base it's quite diverse, and it's everyone who can buy the category. And then you think, okay, how do we appeal to all of those people? And all the great brands of the world have worked out how to have, you don't become mass without mass appeal.
Would you say that it's generally a waste of time, these exercises of creating ICPs or buying personas? It just feels good, but you're not really doing anything insightful?
Well, certainly, there's certainly a lot of time wasted, yes. But can it be delusional? Yes, absolutely. Frozen, I think Frozen was a fantastic hit for Disney, right? It appeals to little girls particularly. Yeah, okay, so, but that said, there'll be tons of little boys who watch Frozen. But it's mad, cuts and peels across cultures, across socio-demographics, and that's why Frozen is a big success. And there's just no avoiding that. You can't say, I want to be a big brand, but I only want to sell to these sort of people. I see sometimes. I was in London and I saw some women's fashion thing that said, such and such customer is positive and outgoing and caring and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever you wish. Your customers are all sorts of people, and some of them are having a bad mood day, and ridiculous. So it's very easy that we can be quite delusional. I only want to sell to the beautiful people. We can be a bit snobby in marketing, can't we?
Absolutely. So how do you think that should I guess have a direct impact on how we think about media and what channels we use?
Yes, exactly. We need media that can reach all of our category buyers, and that might require using several different medium. But unless we're a super big brand, probably, in general, marketers probably use far too much media. They just sort of talk about targeting, and then they're using 17 different channels. Crazy. But yes, reach is not optional. Oh, unless you want to shrink. I was just reading an American article in it's not an academic journal, it's sort of a pretend academic journal. Anyway, and it's talking about it was a thing selling some consultant's product, and it was about targeting. I think it was about 15% of the brand's buyer base, and people saying, get a higher ROI if you did this. It's like, well, yeah, of course, you can target the people who are, most likely to buy next month, but that's pretty much the same as saying we can take the advertising budget and just spend a bit more in store, and then we'll be able to see it in next month's sales. Yeah, sure. Yes, that's true. But the fact is, if we want to grow as a brand, we need to, and we want to stay the size we are, we need to reach that other 85% of people and more. It's just not optional.
And I guess also there's a kind of delusion there that we'll be able to convince these people, we'll be able to influence this small segment, when in reality, like, it's really hard as marketing. Well, we'll get to that later. I think the kind of mechanism of marketing. I'd love to get your take on that.
There was actually an academic article that just came out very recently, and they showed that some digital media that you would need, like, if you did, it wasn't even that much targeting, but you needed to for the same return, you needed to double the click rate, and they went, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. You're not going to get double. So you're not going to get double, then stop narrowing your targeting.
Good point. Okay. What are your thoughts on discounts and promotions as a way of getting those incremental sales, incremental new customers?
I guess the problem with there is incremental. So studying, there's been, 50 years of studying price promotion, so we know a lot about them. They cause sales spikes. Yes, of course, because the brand on deal gets. But what's happening is it's not pulling in extra customers. What it's doing is that a typical buyer has a repertoire of brands. They come up to the shelf, or they're looking on their phone on the app. They see various options that they can buy, and they see one of their brands is on special. Well, then that really helps the decision that day quite substantially, right? So they buy, and that causes a sales spike. But those aren't pulling in new customers to the brand. Those are pulling people who they had a chance of buying it. So say they had 3 brands in the repertoire, and they were equally distributed. So that person has about a third of a chance of buying it at any time. But when you're on special, they maybe have 2/3 of a chance, right? So yeah, sales spike, wonderful, great. But you haven't won new customers from that. They have very low reach. Overall, let's face it, most of your customers aren't in the store that week. They're not even looking to buy, so they're very, very limited reach. But they produce a sales spike up and down. And then, of course, your competitors do the same next week and steal from your full priced sales in retaliation. So they can't make money. They're an investment. Well, they're a cost. They're an investment. You cannot make money from them. They don't do anything to grow the brand. Why do you do them? Why do you do some? Because they're part of, if a retailer is a high-low retailer and they have price promotions, then you have to play the game and do some. But you don't want to do any more than you need to. The idea that you're winning new customers is if you're telling yourself that then the odds are you're going to overspend on it, because of that's delusion. Yeah. If you tell yourself, we got to do some of this to keep the retailer happy, then you're probably going to get it right. You're going to do just the amount you have to do to keep the retailer sweet.
So it's a necessary evil, kind of.
It can be, yes. Yeah, it's certainly. There's lots of stuff we do in marketing that are necessary evils. If we had the choice, we wouldn't offer delivery. We wouldn't. There's lots of things we wouldn't do, but you have to get customers.
Got it. This one kind of thing, I don't think there's necessarily much or any empirical research on, but I'd love to get your opinion on it just in general. So this idea that brands in 2023 have to include some higher purpose, some environmental or social cause in their kind of brand messaging because customers demand it, and it's not just enough to just sell the product, focus on the benefits and the features of the product. What are your thoughts?
Okay, well, there is some empirical evidence on that, right? I mean, we can just stop and think for a bit. You go, can you name a few brands that have been highly successful that don't do that? Yeah, I can name hundreds, if not thousands, of brands that are highly successful that have not done that. So there's immediate sort of falsification of you have to do it. But we've got research going on in the Institute on looking at the empirical claims for competitors. First of all, just documenting, do consumers really know what the brand's purpose is? Because if they don't know it, it's very hard for them to react to it. And then secondly, those who do know it, do they care about it? Does it in some way affect their behavior? Does it affect their perceptions of the brand? I mean, they've got to think better about it, or think that it's more, differentiated or something, right, for it to work. So we're documenting those things. So the scary thing is, what you've just said is fairly uncontroversial. There'll be thousands of people have probably said that, nodded their heads at conferences. Really? So we just launched into this. We're like sheep. We just accept something because someone says it at a conference. And if we think about it, we can think of really successful brands that haven't done that. Yeah. What's the poster child? Patagonia, right? For purpose. Yeah. And their hugely successful product is that puffer jacket, right? Really, puffer jackets are big all around the world. Yeah. Which is made from fossil fuel, by the way, which is not really that not really sustainable. Trade in your woolen jumper for a fossil fuel puffer jacket. Yeah. Anyway, so Patagonia is the poster child for purposes, but then you look around. I mean, I can look around people in Adelaide, and there's people with puffer jackets that are by Kathmandu and Kmart and Target, and Patagonia would be tiny brands. So there's lots of other brands that don't do that. They succeeded. Why have they succeeded? Because puffer jackets are really popular.
I guess also the marketers are kind of threatened by that idea because it could make us seem a bit redundant, and we're not the masters of the universe. We're actually controlling and building this loyalty and affinity towards the brand.
Maybe. That's my thing. I think marketers are often very arrogant and quite snobby and a little bit delusional. I don't know what psychologists would bundle those things together for. But yeah, really wonderful jobs. Marketing is a wonderful profession. It is, the market economy has made the world richer, safer, happier than ever before. It's not a bad thing the economy is people doing things for other people. So market and things that other people want. Marketers work to work out what people want and deliver that, like puffy jackets. Yeah. That's a fantastic thing to do. I'm a bit surprised why marketers feel they need to layer on an apology as well. Consumers don't. Consumers are very happy. You little kids, and you watch them delighted that they've opened a can of soft drink. This is fun. They don't go, oh, and now I also have to to tell me what you're doing for building wells in Africa or something. They don't.
Yeah, I think maybe it's also kind of speaks to our marketer's sense of self-importance, I guess.
Also cringe, I think there is some cringe. There's a lot of people in marketing who feel that they somehow committed. Commercial is bad. It's the old, we still inherit a whole lot of Victorian things where the only noble profession is to own land and not work, and looking down on the merchant class. It's funny. We still have these snobby attitudes, don't we?
So kind of related to that is this idea of differentiation, and that being the key to all success in marketing and branding, that you must build a very differentiated product and brand that appeals to, again, a very specific segment of the overall market. What are your thoughts of that?
So that logic comes from, one is avoiding competition, right? I've seen even non-marketers do this. They just naturally want to not compete, right? So can I find something that someone else is not making? Which is pretty hard, but there is a natural desire for that. Then there's also what sounds like impeccable logic, which is the David Acker and Kohler have all expressed this of saying, if people don't see a meaningful difference in a product, they don't see it's different from the others, and it's a difference they like, then why would they be loyal? And that sounds, this is the problem of intuitive myths. If they sound sensible, they endure. And that sounds just like impeccable logic. Yeah, of course. Like, if someone just thought this brand was pretty much the same as that other brand, then why on earth would they be loyal to it? But what we've learned in studying consumers is it's a bit like consumers have said back to us. Consumers said, but why wouldn't I be loyal to it? No, but why would you be loyal to your car or your bank when you feel that it's just the same as the others? They go, well, why wouldn't I? It's just so easy. It's just so easy to keep buying around. If I think it's the same as the others, well, then I'll just keep buying this one then. Because it's just as good. And indeed, they're right. It is.
So can you talk about then how distinctiveness is different from differentiation and why
Okay.
it matters?
So most brands, if we look in I work in a business school right here in Adelaide, and every year we will graduate hundreds and hundreds of accounting students, and they'll go out to accounting practices, and each accounting practice will be pretty much exactly the same as every other accounting practice, except for maybe a few creative ones will end up in jail. But in the main, they will be undifferentiated in that sense, and other than where geography, where their offices. That is the fact of modern markets. Modern markets tend to have competitive matching. There isn't huge differentiation, but there are brands. So I don't know if you know that M&M's, right, multi-billion-dollar brand from Mars, is actually a copy of what became Nestle Smarties. I don't think it was Nestle original. It might have been Roundtree original. I don't know. Anyway, candy-coated chocolate, right? So it's a complete copy of that. But one of them is just so much bigger than the other one. The one is just fabulous because it's got the M&M's characters, right? I mean, its branding is just wonderful and so much better than the other. So branding is essential because consumers can't consume. So here you've got consumers, they're busy, distracted, they have lives, very happy to be loyal to a few brands that they know and to pretty much disregard the others unless the others come up with some amazing creative way to get their attention. They're willing to be loyal, but they do need to know which of their brands. And the branding has to be there, otherwise they will get distracted and maybe go off to another one. If they come into the shelf and they go, oh, right, what's our milk? Which milk will we buy? Which if they don't know, which is the one is theirs that they're not going to get in trouble with when they take home. Then they can't be loyal. So distinctiveness, branding, making sure that people can, if a new consumer tries to and goes, oh, I like this yogurt, this is really nice. Do they get in their brand what the brand name is or what it looks like and where it is on shelf or where you would buy it? So branding is very, very important in a world that is largely not hugely differentiated. Again, McDonald's, wow, are they just such a fantastic, distinctive, what do McDonald's sell? They sell American diner food, right? The classic American diner, the sort of James Dean, 1950s Formica tables. It sold what? Soft drinks, shakes, fries, burgers. Wow. And McDonald's is just a 1950s American diner. Yeah. But it's so distinctly McDonald's, isn't it? I mean, its distinctiveness is just fantastic. Golden arches, Scottish name, all of these things are sort of weird. Nothing really to do with American diners, but they're all about branding McDonald's. I can tell you, we've done surveys. Consumers rate McDonald's rather very low for perceived differentiation.
Wow, that's really interesting.
But it's distinctive, yes. Wow. Legal judges make a very clear distinction between these two concepts because differentiation, meaningful benefit for consumers, either has to be covered by a patent or otherwise you don't get protection for it. I always think there must have been a time, I don't know when it was, when some TV manufacturer came out with the first remote control and consumers loved it, right? They loved not having to get up from the couch. They could change the channel. This is fantastic. And it's so good that all the other manufacturers just copied it immediately. Now, if that TV company had gone into court with the judge and said, we said we are the only ones allowed a remote control, unless they had a patent for the tech, which lasts for a little while, the judge would just go, no, sorry, it's a benefit to consumers. So, no, the law does not protect anything that's a benefit to consumers. However, if someone tried to steal the M&M's characters off Mars and they went into court, the judge will rule, no, those are Mars. They signal that the product is coming from the Mars Corporation. That's branding. No, you're not allowed to steal that. That is covered by law. So distinctiveness can be defended by law, differentiation not. And so judges, I do find it interesting because I see debates on LinkedIn and things. You get seriously well-paid marketers who find it difficult to handle these two concepts. I go, but legal judges can. They're not even in marketing. They have no problem whatsoever. I think marketers critical or
I guess speaks to the fact that certain professions are more rigorous than others.
You hear some of the marketers and they'll say differentiation, distinctiveness. It's just semantics, isn't it? I go, no. You try telling that to a judge. Yeah, we stole their M&M's characters, but it's really differentiation. It's a benefit to the consumer. So it's just semantics, right? Yes, you will get laughed out of court.
One thing that I'd love to ask you, it's kind of a very broad question, so you can take it however you want. But this idea of the mechanism through which advertising marketing actually works. I think you touched upon certain pieces of it. But if you had to explain succinctly, what is the actual benefit to the company? Through which mechanism does marketing actually work? And because what I find is that there are so many different understandings and expectations, let's say across, for instance, the management team. CFO has one expectation that marketing will be very measurable. It will be maybe very immediate. The CEO may have another, and the CMO have a completely different expectation. So in your view, how would you describe the process through which marketing actually generates growth?
Well, the story, the theory that matches the empirical laws that we know, right, matches the real world, is that in the long run, or to explain why a brand has so much sales and this one doesn't, or it's about how much mental and physical availability those two brands have. So marketing has a fairly good claim to say that it's our job to nurture those along with sales and stuff, but we play a substantial role in nurturing those two assets of mental availability and physical availability. And the building of those assets takes a long time. Fortunately, they don't disappear overnight either. That's good, but the nurturing of them is required. But it means that what I'm doing today as a marketer is largely about building the value of the share price, which is based on our 10, 20 years next performance, right? It's not about what we're doing today. If you want to actually know what's driving the sales today, it's the work of the marketing of people that were here 10 years ago and 20 years ago. That is the reality. That's the way that marketing works. It works, there are a few things that we do that show up immediately in this week's sales, and that's like a price promote. Anything we do in store or at the point of buying, the Google, paid search and things like that are just hitting the people who are actually buying this week. But everything else we do is putting things in place that are there for all the people who aren't buying this week, that are aren't going to buy for ages. Therefore, the children that aren't yet born yet, or the little kids that are learning today that Ford is a brand of car. It's going to substantially increase their chance that they'll buy a Ford later on in their life. That's the way that marketing affects the world.
I think I remember reading some article of yours. You said you were taught when you were studying marketing correctly that advertising was a weak force. So I guess that's how you should think about it.
Yeah, that is the classic debate. John will say Andrew Ehrenberg talk about weak. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a weak force, but a very, it's like gravity. Gravity's a weak force, right? But it has still substantial impact. I would look, hardly anyone in there. Very rarely in your life do you see an ad and go, "Oh yeah, that is a much better brand." Yeah, it does happen, but it's not a big part of advertising. So it's a weak force in the sense that it can't. And political advertising has been shown to do this too. That it's some effect is pretty much zero as far as persuasive. You tell people that it just. Because we know it's being sold, the source that's coming to us is quite biased and wants us to say this one's better than that one. So it's not a very persuasive force, but it does refresh memories, and it does tell us about new brands, so it builds memories. It does tell us things like the McDonald's now does breakfast, or builds memories that allow us to buy, and it does that at scale, or can do that at scale. Right? And the great thing, it's a weak force, but it's a force that can act on millions, if not billions, of people. So, say you're a super, you're Coca-Cola or something, and you look at one of your brands and you go, today 1 million people in this country, bought from the category. Like, okay, cool, but there's 400 million people in the country, and with advertising, I can actually reach that 399 other million people. They will buy at some other time. So advertising is a weak force, but it's potentially a very, very broad force.
Which means that the potential impact over time can be absolutely enormous between a brand that does it well and one who doesn't do it well.
Yes, and so there are brands that have been built without advertising. Right? I mean, particularly if their category is taking off and they open stores, they get into stores, yeah, that's fine. But it's very hard to stay a big brand when you've got competitors without advertising. So it's hugely about it's about the future of the brand. So how much we spend on advertising is largely a forecasting question. How much do we want to invest in this brand? Do we think it's got a great future? Yes, then we should be investing in it. If we think, nah, this thing is like it's going to be gone in 5-10 years, then yeah, you wouldn't spend much on advertising. If you stop advertising, our research shows that it appears that there is a decay effect, that the brand starts to lose share, etc. But it doesn't happen immediately. The fact is that our advertising today is largely about the next 5-10 years. So turn it off for a quarter, and what happens? Pretty much nothing. Whereas if you shut the doors of your store, wow, you see it in sales immediately, because that's about the people who are buying this week. Advertising is not about the people who are going to buy next month.
Got it.
Price promotions do that.
Got it. One final question for you, Byron. So if marketing then is this force which acts over a very long period of time, and
it's spread very, very thinly. Last year we advertised some scholarships for really bright people coming into the marketing degree, and we know that the amount of year 12, about 17-year-old students who are considering a business degree is an absolute fraction of the population, and our chance to the weak force of saying that there's a scholarship is very, very small. The main effect of our advertising is just reaching the 99.9% of people who aren't about to start a business degree, but who might later in the future or have children or colleagues or grandchildren, and then they might go, "Oh, in Adelaide, this is the best, one of the best marketing degrees in the world. I remember seeing an ad for that many years ago." Most of I'm about to write an article that says I think some people have said that most of advertising's effect, maybe like 55% of advertising's effect is long term. I'm like, no, that's a way underestimation. It's like 98% of advertising's effect is in the long term. You cannot have much of it. The stuff that affects next week's sales is the advertising that was done way ago, and the stuff that you're doing in store or on screen today, which is not advertising.
Wow, 98%. Yeah, I understand. Something in that kind
You
of
get
proportion.
from working about what portion of your category buyers are actually in the market next week. And
Yeah.
even for big, fast-moving goods categories, it's not that many.
So if it is really, really about the long term, how do we today judge whether the kind of the strategy or the messaging that we picked is the correct message that we can really kind of push for the next 5, 10, 15 years? And when do we know when it's time to switch and to try something else? Like, how can we know today if it's really about long term, if what we're doing will work in the long term?
Well, this is about understanding. So you need to have a disciplined knowledge base of understanding what are the distinctive assets for your brand, and making some strategic choices of which assets you're going to invest in. You need to understand what Jenny calls the category entry points, the cues that fire in people's brains that bring them into the category. And you need to say, are we communicating those? And once you have that, then you can assess your advertising and you can craft your advertising message to do that. And then you can get creative, because there's no textbook thing that says that, this sort of, ads with kittens and then work better. There's no clear guidelines on that. There's all sorts of different ways of being creative, but you need to do it in a way that builds the right memory structures for your brand and for your category.
Got it. Byron, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show. What's the best place for people who want to follow your research, kind of what you're interested in and reading about and learning? Is it LinkedIn the best place to follow you?
Yeah, we're active on the Emory Bass Institute's active on LinkedIn and Twitter. Of course, we can hop onto Amazon and stuff and buy our books, which of course I'd recommend, and I recommend you read them multiple times. Marketingscience.info. If you just Google Byron Sharp or Emory Bass, I think we're that hard to find in this very connected world. And if you're serious about that, then you become a sponsor of the Institute. And so we have a family of many corporations around the world that are trying to transform their marketing, which is not as easy as it sounds. And so they get access to a lot of stuff in the Institute, but we also stick stuff out to the public domain as well.
Awesome. Like I said, thank you so much for taking time. And I really look forward to keep following you and learning from you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. You can find all episodes of The Growth Pod on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts.